We're going to talk about today, again, this is Grid. We're going to talk about how to find and renovate a fixer-upper. So great timing in the market as we are very, very short in inventory. There are less houses on the staying on the market. Houses are popping up, but they're just getting snapped up. So the ones that need work, and you look at them and you're like, oh man, I got the juice, I got the flow, I want to do it. Give me this project, but you don't know where to start. And that's what we're giving you today, is an option for you to do it with a construction loan. And then to hear firsthand from Joe, one of our guests and also one of my clients, Grid favorite. He's always great to contribute. He's renovating two projects now and has a few under his belt. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce myself and my partner, Carlos Garcia. We lead a team of about 10 agents and 6 back office. And we helped 213 families last year. So we know not only help a lot of people, but we know a lot of the agents around town. And I think that's really important. We are both buy hold investors, so that's how we're buy hold investors at heart. And you know, I've come from a financing background, been doing this for 5 years, as many of you know. Have 2 houses on the hill, and Carlos has one house on the hill, maybe 2 if I'm not mistaken. Maybe he sold it, but he has a bunch of rental properties, and that's where you can find us, Carlos at ngarcia.com or Nick at Garcia. Carlos, you want to say a little bit about yourself before we kick it off to our guests?
Sure. Carlos Garcia, former attorney, a longtime buy and hold investor, run Garcia Properties with Nick. We are a sales team, like he said, in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Please help us out. Please help us out. This is going to be, if we do it, and I think we're on our way, our 10th straight year selling $100 million of real estate for each of those 10 years. We've done it 9 straight, but as everybody knows, in sales, you start the year off at 0. So that don't mean nothing unless we do it again, and that's what we're trying to do. We feel very, very blessed to be in such a great market as the DMV. We're, I think, extremely enthusiastic about real estate. One of the filters that we use to determine whether a person can be on our team and really contribute the way we need them to is whether they have a lot of enthusiasm for real estate. So we're not just peddling something. We're actually working in an area that's changed our lives and changed the lives of many of our clients. And I know, preaching to the choir, many folks in this meeting, it's changed your life. You're probably already working on helping it change your life further, maybe change the lives of those around you. And then there's some people who are probably participating because they know that happens, and they want to know a little bit more about how that happens. So this is a place where we talk about real estate in that way. It's a very open forum. It's all oriented towards sharing. It's not like, you know, miserly and clutchy. It's open and you know, transparent, and people are going to make relationships among each other who are in this room, who are in our club or on our roster, and we can't even keep track of all of them. And that's the sort of the organic nature of what's supposed to happen in a meetup. And one last topic I'll mention, and we're not really prepared to announce when we'll be meeting in person, but we're supposed to be meeting in person. We've just not been doing so because of you know what, and because you know what seems to be a condition that's little by little morphing into a more positive and less intrusive one. Hopefully it won't prevent us from meeting in the near future. So more to come on that as we sort of wrap our minds around the demise of Omicron and hopefully the return of let's call them normal relationships. Although this does feel very normal now. So we might do some sort of a combination of in-person and not in-person for a while, then back to in-person. And then we might even dabble with this medium once again in the future. We'll try to be as current and adaptable and comfortable as possible for everybody. But it would really, I'm just looking at all the people in this virtual room right now. And I would love it if we were in a physical room and maybe there were some beers and non-alcoholic drinks in the corner, some snacks, and an opportunity for those who have the time to linger when the official stuff was all over, to just sort of mix and match and talk. But that's the vibe. I'm Carlos. Thanks.
Carlos, can we do it at your fancy house with the crown molding and the beautiful paint color and the high 12-foot ceilings? I think you should host it over at your place and have a valet for us when we come.
Minus the valet and the 12-foot ceilings, that could happen. You have quite an imagination. But I mean, my house is good enough to host, but maybe not quite as nice as you're imagining.
No, I always love seeing your house. I love the paint color.
Chad,
and nice stuff. So,
tu casa, tu casa.
Yeah, like I said, I appreciate it.
We'll do it. Hey, Nick, I don't know if I screwed something on my screen or if it's like this for everybody, but your presentation is just one of the little small boxes on my screen. Have I done something wrong? Is everyone seeing it?
How about now? Did that change anything? So Google has this cool layout function. It's 3 dots right by the hangout, right by the hang up. So don't push the hang up. You can actually change your view options, change layout, and click auto. And you could actually minimize or maximize the tile amount. And then if you want to pin something, you pin the presentation. So you just hover over the presentation, and then there's like a little pin, so you poke that and it pins it. So if you want to look at Carlos all the time, you just hover over his face, pin it, and then I see Carlos. But Grid, the goal of Grid is growing your database, so getting everybody's email. So please feel free to share your information if you want to network on the chat. Go ahead and do that now. Your name, what you're looking for, maybe just a little bit about yourself, and that way you guys could connect offline, send maybe email addresses and such like that. I know Scott Bloom is here. He's a great resource for property management, also C of O. So if you ever have a question, he has great resources like what is a C of O, rentals, how do you make it, up to snuff. He's always been helpful. And then we have some other great people, Chris and Matt from First Home Mortgage. What's my credit? Do I need a better credit? So share your information, share what you want to, do deals. We do believe in our relationships and return on the relationships. So that's what it's all about. Invest in people and assets. So, and then develop leadership and expertise. So that's the point of Grid and kind of the goals. So right now, I'll use this platform again. Introduce yourself, round robin. I'm not going to call on people, but let's use the next, let's say, 5 minutes to do networking. A little bit, and I left those questions. I'm going to mute myself so I don't talk too much.
Are you suggesting that you want everyone to try to introduce themselves?
Whoever wants to.
So if you're not feeling like it, you don't have to. We have so many people, we might not get through everybody, but feel free if you really want to introduce who you are, or in particular what it is you want to learn in the course of the near future, whether we might be able
to just put it in the comments
or another time. I saw Brad Henning a minute ago. I see Rima. I'm seeing people I haven't seen in a while.
All right, Sandy raised the hand. That's a good protocol. Go ahead, Sandy.
Hey, I just wanted to say hi and thank you guys for hosting this again. This is my second time attending. The last time I don't think I got in right at the beginning, so I missed some really important stuff, but I wanted to say thank you because I learned so much from the first meeting that I attended. I'm sort of like you, Carlos. I'm an attorney turned realtor, but I really want to get involved in investing. I'm with Long and Foster now, but I'm open to, suggestions about moving about. It's an exciting time, a really great market, lots of stuff going on, and you guys always share really great information. The one thing I did not get information on that I really wanted was hard money bankers. So I'm excited about what we're going to learn tonight from everyone.
We'll follow
thank
up and connect you with some of those folks. I don't know if
Okay.
any of them are here today. They've certainly been on prior panels and meetings.
No one will ever share their best hard money lender with you. Everyone's always going to share their second or third best one.
Wow.
So
I didn't know
usually,
that.
if anyone has a good hard money lender, like I do, like I have someone that doesn't charge me any point, like it's deferred hard money, and I don't have to. It's 10 and 2, and I don't have to pay until I sell the house. I mean, you know what they're going to share with you? They're going to share with you WCP, which requires an appraisal, $1,000 in costs, but no one's going to share with you like their rock star.
Wait, is the money limited? Don't they have a lot of money? What's the problem? Are you borrowing all their money?
Yeah, of course. It's a hard money lender that uses his IRA. It's about $5 million at a time.
All right.
So, Dad, can you share yours then?
You guys hear something funny? I flipped 42 houses last year, right? I used 8 different hard money lenders just to see what everyone was like. I used Temple View. I used Kyle Sonnet out of Bethesda. Forgot his company. I used Lending Homes out of San Francisco. I used Clear Sky Financial out of Burke. I used who else? I used Mark Andriata. I used at least 8 different ones.
We got to move on. We got to move on. Let's share your contact and maybe if you wanted to share some of your second and third. Thanks. Scott, go ahead.
Sorry, it looks like my image froze, at least on my end. Okay, so as Nick mentioned, can you guys hear me okay? I'm Scott Bloom with Columbia Property Management. We focus on a niche of mid to higher end rentals, mostly in DC. I'm a real estate investor myself. Carlos is my agent. We kind of have a reciprocal relationship and it works out really well. So I'm very interested in all aspects of, networking with people. I'm super excited about this group because it is focused primarily on DC and it just has a bunch of great resources and people in the group. So if you have any questions about real estate investing, management, tenant issues, happy to help. And of course, very interested if people don't self-manage anymore.
Thank you. And we'll have Scott on later, maybe to talk about some changes to the rental rules, specifically with Airbnb and
oh gosh,
yeah.
I do have a hard stop at 6:40. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. Thanks, Scott. Anyone else? We'll open it up, and also we'd like to be interactive. So feel free to interrupt us if you have a question or comment. Anybody else?
No, just quick question. Scott, your information is in the box below. You're going to share your information, right? For Scott?
Yeah, I'll put it into the chat.
Thank you.
If I can make a plug for Scott as a property manager real quick, because I am his client. He does a great job for me as a client. So, I'm a very part-time investor. So I have a number of properties. They could tie me up full time, but the goal is not to have that happen. And so the number one thing that I want out of my properties, because I'm focused on sales, is that they don't bother me, that they are as close to being like my 401k as possible. Scott helps that happen, and I'm grateful to him for that. And then as a realtor, the thing I like about him is that whenever I refer someone over to him, he treats them as like my account. So he'll let me know when they need something, heads up, they might need an analysis on whether to sell or whether to rent. So he's very loyal to the realtor, and that, if you sent him the client, then he thinks of them as like, you're a team together with him for that client for life. He's not going to send them to another realtor. So that's a very nice thing from a realtor's perspective. So can't say enough about Scott and Washington Property Management. He's an honest, good man and the son of a realtor.
All right, let's keep it moving here. So got some disclosures. Scan over them quickly. All right, so we're getting into it. We got two great guests today. I'm going to let them present, and then we're going to Matt Borgerson and Chris are going to kick it off with Renovation Loans. So Matt, go ahead, take it over.
Thanks, Nick.
Can
Hi,
I,
guys.
can I introduce you quickly, Matt?
Please.
Matt is a guy who gets things done. Well, first of all, there's a lot of people in this virtual room, so it's clear to me that time is going to be tight tonight. But if at any point you want to introduce yourself or a question or a concept, whether it's something that we can address today or in the near future, just get that out there. You know, take over for a minute and or raise your hand or put it in the chat. Now, quickly, there are a lot of good loan officers in Washington, D.C. Matt is one of them. And one of the things you're going to love about Matt is his energy. He has a yes, we can kind of this ethic and energy. And it's like when things don't seem to be going right, just get Matt involved and he's a problem solver. I really like and depend upon Matt. Matt, thanks for joining us, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. That is my MO is all about finding solutions. I'm not afraid to dig into it. But yeah, so a little bit about myself, Matt Borgerson with First Home Mortgage. I'm a licensed loan officer in DC, Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and now Delaware and Florida. I've been doing this since 2014 and helped over 220 families last year alone. So my team is very well equipped to handle this super fast market. And a little bit about First Home Mortgage. We started in Maryland, been in this area for the last 30 years. Rates are super competitive. We're what's called a private correspondent lender, so we can pretty much work with any program out there. I brought on my guy, Chris Laughlin, today, who introduced himself a little bit earlier. He is our renovation loan specialist. So when you work with First Home Mortgage, you get 2 loan officers for the price of 1 with our renovation loan products. I handle kind of the local stuff here in DC and the surrounding area, and Chris handles all the renovation intricacies that he does every single day. So there's no one better.
Cool. So a little bit more from Matt. Joe, if you want to do a quick intro.
Yes, hi everyone. Large crowd today. That's great to see. I'm Joe. I live in DC, local buy and hold investor. So basically, along with my partners, we buy and renovate and rehab and rent the properties and refinance them. Basically, a BRRRR strategy. We're applying this in DC, and we don't sell properties. Aside from one property, my prime residence, I sold one time as a condo. But other than that, so we acquire usually single-family homes and to turn them into 5 or 6 bedrooms. And lately, we've been working on 2 projects. Also, one of them is going to be 2 apartments. So we're trying to maximize the square footage and the rental strategy, using the Section 8 as our rental strategy in DC. So yeah, happy to.
It's like the developer version of BRRRR.
Yes.
Or
yes.
Yeah. So renovating a property, instead of making 1 rental, making it 2. And still getting cash out. So, I mean, talk about karate moves. This is a really cool one. And he's almost full time as I'm seeing Joe grow. He's slowly, getting off of his 9 to 5, and then making this his living, which is, as a practitioner, is just so awesome to see.
Yeah, I'm still trying to, transition, like Nick said. So I work full time at the hospital in DC, and I like my job. I like to have the options of not working sometimes. So I'm using this, rental strategy to do that.
Great Instagram if you are not following Joe and his team at YCI Properties. Great content they put out there, which we'll get into later, about if you're in the business, even if you're trying it out, social media is a great platform to attract people. All right, so Matt Borgerson and Chris are going to go through the home from First Home, are going to go through the renovation loan process. Again, a great tool in your belt, even if you're not going to use it.
Let's do it. Chris, you want to take the reins here?
Yeah, I'll run with it. Thank you guys for having me. Thanks, Matt, for the intro. Nicholas and Carlos, nice to meet you guys, and thanks for having me. So I've been at First Home since 2010. I've been on this side of the business since 2016. I have a finance background, went to McGill University in Montreal, Canada, and got my MBA from Loyola University in Baltimore. I've been managing this department since 2017, and it's pretty much all I do is these renovation loans. So the vast majority of what we do is for primary residences. That said, we can use the conventional renovation loan programs for investment properties and second homes. What a renovation loan is it's one mortgage. It acts just like a mortgage, and it's based on the total acquisition cost with a purchase. So it's the purchase price of the property plus the total finance renovation costs. And what those consist of are the contractor's bid between labor and materials. There's going to be a contingency reserve of 10 or 15% on each loan, and that's for unforeseen issues that may come up after closing once the contractor gets into the property and starts doing work, because we can't change the figures after closing. The loan amount's set. So we've got a contingency reserve in the event they open up walls and there are things that need to be addressed that couldn't be identified prior to closing. Because these loans, unlike most home loans, most residential mortgage loans, allow borrowers to complete repairs after closing, after they own the house. So we do a lot of bank-owned properties, HUD-owned properties, where sellers are not willing to complete repairs prior to closing. So we get a scope of work set prior to closing between the contractor, and there's typically a HUD consultant, a HUD-approved consultant involved. And we get an accurate scope of work, and then we get the appraisal ordered based on that scope of work. So we get a subject to appraisal. We typically don't get an as-is appraisal done. It's done based on what renovations are going to be done and what that home is going to be worth after the renovation's complete. That's what we're concerned with as the lender. Rima, I think, has a question. Feel free, please. Happy to answer questions as I go.
So I have a quick question. So you're saying you can finance the repairs and purchase into one loan. That means you get the same rate for a home loan as well as for the renovation loan. They don't have to be two separate things.
Correct. Yeah, it's not like a construction and permanent loan where it's interest only in the initial phase and then it converts to a fixed loan. It's one fixed rate loan for 30 years. Most of the loans that we do are 30 years. So you can do 15, 10 on the conventional side. But yes, it's one loan, one mortgage. So let's say they take 45 days on average to close. Let's say you close in April. Your first payment's going to be due June 1st, and that's a fixed rate for 30 years. And that's combining the purchase and the renovations into one mortgage loan.
Thank you. So it doesn't really impact the rate that you're getting.
It does in that, so the rates are generally a little bit higher than you would get with a standard conventional or standard FHA mortgage loan, just because they're riskier from the lender standpoint. We're typically lending more money than the home is currently worth at closing. So they're a little bit riskier, and therefore we typically charge a little bit higher rate. General rule of thumb is, maybe a 0.5 percentage point higher on a renovation loan than a standard loan. And a lot of people will use a renovation loan to purchase a home, put as little money out at closing as possible. On the primary residences, which we'll get into, they can do as little as 3% down on the conventional versions or 3.5% down on the FHA versions, and that's based on the total acquisition cost. You do the repairs, typically have to be in the loan for at least 6 months, but oftentimes borrowers will then refinance into a standard mortgage loan, a standard conventional loan after the fact, hopefully reduce or possibly eliminate mortgage insurance if you've created equity through the repairs, and hopefully benefit the terms. The only caveat right now is in the interest rate environment we're in, rates have been coming up on us. So, it's not a slam dunk that that'll be possible in 6 months to a year, but it's definitely something worth looking at and something that we do often.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Christian, how does the draw schedule work with the contractor once you close on it? I'm assuming that, does he have to start work on it and then you guys reimburse him? Or do you guys give him a check up front and then he can start working on it?
So it works a little bit differently. There's a limited version, and I think we'll get to this in a future slide, but there's a limited version of each loan and there's a standard version. With the limited versions, it's a maximum of $35,000 worth of work, including the contingency and other finance costs. And with those, we can release on the FHA version 50% upfront to the contractor. They do the work, and then a final inspection is done by the appraiser, and we release the remaining 50% to the contractor. With the conventional, it's a little bit different. We can release 50% of material costs on the limited. With the standard versions, there's no money up front. The contractor's got to have a little bit of startup capital to cover those initial materials, and they're paid in draws as the work is completed. So there's a consultant involved on those. Once you're ready for the first draw, there's a max of 5 draws. Once a portion of the work is completed, we try to average 20% on each. If there's 5 draws, it doesn't always work out perfectly, but the consultant goes out, does an initial inspection, determines a percentage complete at that time, and we release 90% of that amount, and there's a 10% holdback on each draw until the work's completed. So we have the FHA 203K, and then there are 2 conventional versions, one for each agency. Fannie Mae's is the home style, Freddie Mac's is the choice renovation loan. All 3 honestly work nearly identically from a process standpoint. Little intricacies between all 3, and which is going to make the most sense for a borrower typically boils down to the same types of factors that we're looking at with a regular loan, being typically FHA is going to be a little bit more beneficial for the lower credit score borrower, sometimes less money to put down. That said, the conventional versions, if one borrower on the loan is a first-time home buyer, or they qualify for the affordable housing programs, being the Home Ready or Home Possible, we can do as little as 3% down on the conventional for a primary residence. For second homes, it's 10% minimum for conventional. And for investment properties, it's 15% minimum down payment. And that again is based on that total acquisition cost. Typically on the investment properties, with pricing where they are, the pricing gets significantly better as far as the interest rate at 20% down. And then it's another big jump from there at 25% down. So depending on the purchase price of the property and the renovation amount, that can be a significant amount of money, but if they've got cash on hand, it can make a difference. So we do these for first and non-first time buyers. You can do a purchase or a refinance. So I would say the vast majority of the business that we do is purchase. That said, we do a lot of refinances, especially when rates are good, but in this market where inventory is tight and a lot of people are struggling to find houses that they buy, and even when they do, they're being outbid on those. Ultimately, maybe they decide that they want to stay put and fix up the house that they're currently living in. So these loans, you don't necessarily need equity to do a renovation refinance, where for a HELOC or a second lien, usually you have to have some equity in the house to be able to pull money out, or a cash out refinance up to 80%. The renovation loans, we get that scope of work that the borrower wants to include in the loan, and we get an appraisal done to determine an after improved value. And that's what dictates the loan amount that we can go up to. So if they're adding value and updating kitchens and bathrooms, and you can do additions with these loans, the sky's really the limit as far as the types of renovations you can do. You can create equity through the scope and hopefully come to closing with no money and with little to no equity to begin with. So they're a really nice product and feature for certain borrowers that don't have that cash on hand or equity in their house. Minimum credit score on our loans currently right now is also 640. Debt to income, typically we're going to be capped at a 50% debt to income ratio on the conventional versions, and FHA 203K, we can typically go up to 57% on the back ratio. Single family, we can do multi-unit properties. Oftentimes, even for borrowers with good credit scores, the multi-unit properties, borrowers typically use the FHA 203K because you can do that minimum 3.5% down payment, whether it's 1 or 4 units. And for FHA, the borrower has to occupy one of the units for at least a year. So basically, by signing the loan paperwork, you can do the renovation, but you're testifying that you're going to occupy one of those units for 1 year, and then you can do whatever you want with it. It can be an investment property after that. And
Christian, what's the seasoning requirements? So if you buy the house right away and you want to, like, you pay all cash for it, you use a hard money lender and you want to refinance doing the BRR methodology, do you have to hold on to it for 6 months, or do you refinance people out of it in less than 60 days?
You can do it. There's no seasoning requirements on these because they're treated as no cash out refinances. So you can do a conventional or FHA. There's slightly different requirements as far as, like, for instance, on the FHA 203K refinance, we need to typically get an as-is appraisal done in addition to that after improved appraisal. And usually if the same appraiser is going to do it, we can get the as-is at a discount, but there's no seasoning requirement. We sometimes have borrowers purchase in cash and do a refinance within a couple of weeks after that. So on the multi-units for the 203K, one of the nice features is that if they don't qualify as it is, just based on their W-2 income or whatever they do for standard employment, we can use 75%. There's a 25% vacancy factor. We can use 75% of the rental income as dictated by the appraisal on the appraiser for rental income to qualify. So that is a nice feature too. There are a couple other rules as far as multi-unit properties, 3 and 4 unit properties for FHA that I don't want to get too into the weeds, but you know, usually, and for the conventional versions, if you do multi-unit, it requires a bigger down payment.
I mean, that's amazing that your senior requirements are only less than a month or 2 weeks. I hope everyone on the call, I hope everyone on the call appreciates that. United Bank, which is a huge bank here in Northern Virginia, I had bought these 4 houses about 3 months ago, and I have a lot of commercial loans with them. They said that I had to hold on to the property for 6 months before they would let me refinance out of all 4 houses. And the guy had the audacity to send me an email saying that this is what led to the financial collapse back in 2009. And, you know, we don't do these type of things. So I found another bank right down the street that did it, you know, but I just can't believe they lost out on all that business.
Yeah.
Half the banks are doing it, other half are not.
Well, it's funny. I mean, so guidelines are one thing, and per the guidelines, there's no seasoning requirement. That said, typically lenders have early payoff penalties that they'll incur if they do a loan and it pays off with an outside investor within 6 months. So maybe that's why they're saying that you have to hold it for 6 months. But the rules on these renovation loans state that there's no seasoning requirement for the refinances.
That's amazing. I hope everyone on this call is taking notes. That's an amazing benefit.
Yeah. I kind of went through. Go ahead, Carlos. I don't quite understand what you're getting at, Jad. Are you?
Okay, so I bought. So okay, 4 months ago I bought 4 single-family houses in Stafford because inflation was going crazy, right? So I used hard money to buy all 4. Then they were fixed up, and I was ready. I put voucher tenants in them, and I was going to refinance out of all 4. I have a relationship with United Bank out of Fairfax. I have over $6 million in loans with them. So I just figured it'd be easy to keep all my stuff with them. So I went to refinance. They did the appraisals on all 4 properties. They appraised for $1 million. Actually, it was 3 houses. I sold the other one. So it was 3 houses. It was appraised for $1 million. It appraised for $1 million. But my as-is cost was $661,000. That's what I owe the hard money. So they wanted me to bring 15% down of $661,000 for them to refinance me out of the 3 homes, I believe. You understand? Because they don't believe. See, what he's doing on this call is he's refinancing you off of the appraisal. So he would have refinanced me out of the $1 million. So I would have to bring 0 down at closing. I'd probably even get money back. And he's not requiring you to hold the property for 6 months. He says you can do it right when you're ready to refinance out of the property, which is incredible.
Yeah, and since they're treated as no cash out, we're limited in terms of the amount that you can get back at closing. Typically, so with Fannie, they say on the renovation loans you can't get anything back. You can bring $0 to closing, but you can't get money back. With Freddie Mac, you can get up to, I think it's the greater of, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, is it 2% or $2,000?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, so you can get back, even on the renovation loan, you can get back 2% of the loan amount. So yeah, and we are capped at, that's a good point that you said. In DC, we rarely run into it, but on a single family property, now the limits are $970,800 that we're capped at our loan amount. So we don't have like a true jumbo renovation product. I don't know anyone that does, but we can go up to the district loan limits, or if you've got a property in PG County or Baltimore City or whatever, the loan limits are a little bit lower. So we are capped at those, but we can go up right up to the limit.
So that's the 970 in the city, for example?
Correct. Yeah. 970, 800 right now in DC it went up to.
Yeah. And Chris, I was spacing out there a little bit. So is everything you're talking about for a primary resident, or can an investor do what you're talking about?
No, yeah, we do investment loans as well. The 203K is strictly for primary residences. We do the conventional on primary residences as well, but the conventional versions can be used on second homes and investment properties too. The loan to value max percentage is just reduced when you're doing an investment property. It's 85% max on investment. So that, to Jad's point, I don't know if that was kind of what you're running into, but we can go up to whatever 85% is of the after improved appraised value, as long as the ultimate loan amount doesn't exceed that county limit of 970, 800.
Let's talk.
Yeah, but Carlos, what's even better than that is forget about putting down the 15%. You can just put down zero down, because you can have hard money give you the entire amount and then refinance with him 2 weeks later once the appraisal is done.
Yeah, and we'd pay off the hard money loan as part of our refinance.
But obviously you can go up to 10 houses, then you got to roll it into commercial.
Hey,
because you can only do up to 10 houses.
You see how hard it is to keep up with Jad? Not only is he moving fast and doing deals, but he's thinking fast. Like, I'm like 5 seconds after he's finished, I'm like, oh, now I can say it one more time.
Me or Jad?
Oh, Jad is just he's a deal maker.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I'm at Mike Jim.
Nice.
Moving around too.
So for this refinance, you pay off, but then you put it into is it just a conventional investor loan that you refinance them into, or what product do you refinance?
So after the fact, like after the renovation's complete? Or
yeah.
You mean like when you use the refinance or renovation loan to do the refinance of like a hard money loan, like Jad's talking about?
Okay, yeah, that thing. Number two option.
So if you're doing what Jad talks about and you use hard money to purchase it, then if we refinance using a renovation loan, the new loan is a conventional renovation loan if it's an investment property.
Oh, so I see what he's doing. Okay, that was a little maneuver there. You're basically saying use your product, but acquire the property a different way, in a more competitive way, and then refinance using your product.
Right, where you're not bound to the same.
Wow.
But also, Nicholas, you're not putting down 15%. Now you're only putting down zero. So if you buy the house for $300,000, but it's worth $400,000, right? So you get hard money to give you the entire $300,000. Then you go to him and say, I want to refinance out of this. The appraisal comes in at $400,000. All you did was pay the hard money, maybe $6,000 or $7,000, instead of you having to put down 15% of $300,000.
I mean, I could just marinate that was a lot of knowledge, and great way to buy a house with zero money down. I guess.
But it gets better than that, Nicholas. If the house that you're buying at $300,000, if you can find a renter before you even close on it, your renter will pay the hard money amount for you each month while you're refinancing with Christian.
That's in Virginia. It's easy to move tenants around.
Wow. Sandy, go ahead. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. This was a quick question for Christopher. Back to the renovation loan. I just want to make sure I understand just the process of the transaction. So say, for instance, I have a client who is a buyer who would like to buy a home and renovate it. But, DC is a hyper competitive market. They want to get that offer in. But, they don't know if they should engage a contractor beforehand or after. So with what you said this evening, it sounds like we would have to bring a contractor in almost immediately to write up whatever the scope of work is going to be, and then present that to you separately for the renovation loan. Is that how that goes?
More often than not, with the purchases, we'll try to get the HUD consultant into the property as quickly as possible. And we typically say hold off ideally until the offer is accepted until you do that, because there is an upfront fee for the HUD consultant. That said, it's financeable into the loan. So whatever they pay the HUD consultant upfront, they'll essentially be reimbursed for at closing. It can be tough timing wise in a market like this, because if they're only going to accept a 30-day contract, I mean, we can try to make that, but we're transparent up front. We might need a little bit of extra time if there are really any delays in getting the scope of work, because the HUD consultant's job initially is they're going to go in, do an initial inspection. That can be instead of the home inspection, standard home inspection, or on top of it. And they're going to identify, whether for FHA or conventional, the minimum mandatory repairs that have to be done to that property to get it up to conventional or HUD's minimum property standards. But the borrower is going to tell them any wish list items that they want to do in addition to those mandatory items. And the HUD consultant, typically the ones that we use, they turn their initial report around either that night or the next day, is going to give them a full scope of work, and each item is going to be labeled mandatory, desired, or recommended. And so they're going to give them one version of the report with all the line items with their estimates as far as what they think is market cost for a contractor in the year to do that work. And they're going to give them a second version of that report. It's called the bid on repairs. That's what they want to get their contractors' bids on. So if we can get that consultant's report within the first week that they're under contract, we can get the appraisal ordered using that. Even though we know that the numbers are most likely going to change once they select a contractor and get a contractor's bid. Because as long as the scope's accurate, the appraisal shouldn't really change a whole lot, because, you know, materials and cost can play into it, but it's really looking at what they're doing. And then they work on their contractor's bids while the appraisal's in the works. And then we typically kind of need everything nice and neat as far as the final contractor's bid, final consultant's report reflecting that contractor's bid, ideally like a week prior to closing at the latest, just to give our closer and underwriting time to approve the loan and the closer time with TRID to get the CD signed 3 business days prior to closing. So it's tight in a 30-day timeline. That's why we say like ideally 45 if you can get it, but you know, we try to make whatever dates on that contract.
But you know what, Christopher, what's it?
Christopher, I'm sorry, Chad.
No, go ahead.
Just one last question. Are you doing a lot of these renovation loans in DC, given how competitive the market is and how tight the window? I haven't sold anything where people didn't want to close in 30 days.
I know. And that's why we do, you know, a fair amount of bank-owned properties and distressed properties that have been sitting there. And sometimes there is a little bit more leeway if there aren't as, you know, turnkey properties. Good luck getting anything over 30 days. But bank-owned stuff that does need a little bit of work, hopefully, as long as the offer is good enough to beat out the other ones, hopefully they'll give them a little extra time.
Right, and that's what I was going to tell you, Sandy, is that on HUD, you have the exclusive for these FHA loans. So anyone who's bidding on HUD properties in Maryland, that's what you're failing to take into consideration, because all of us are like, who the F is going to wait 60 days for you to get a HUD consultant and to go get that? But if you're killing it with HUD homes, then HUD says, submit it and they'll give it to you. That's the whole point.
Wow.
Because they give you first look, I think, for like 45 days. How many days is it, Christopher? Isn't it like 3 weeks, or for someone who's HUD qualified, or for the FHA programs with the HUD on the HUD website?
Do you mean like how much time do they give you on a HUD contract? Or
Well, no, I mean like today, for instance, there was like 4 awesome homes that came on the market that if I was, you know, looking on Virginia, but I can't touch them because you have to be, they give it to people that are going to use it as their single family residences. So those are the perfect people that would come to Sandy and Christopher to bid on those houses, because they would, HUD will give you the time. That's the whole purpose of that program.
Right. There is a bidding window where they say all offers must be submitted by this date. I don't know, Chad, exactly how many days they give you, but yeah, I think it's at least a couple weeks from the time it goes on their website, if not more than that.
Okay.
So a lot of, and Matthew, a lot of tricky investors, what they do is they put the house under their mom's name and they buy it because they have a different last name, and they end up flipping those houses. Unfortunately, I'm a lawyer like Sandy and Carlos, and you know, we'll get disbarred, but there's a lot of people buying those HUD homes. Let's just say that their mom and their aunts are buying them.
Wow.
Another situation I've had before is someone going under contract with a standard loan. They get the inspector in there and find out the roof has to be replaced next week. So we have 30 days to close. They go back to Mr. Seller and say, hey, we're not going to ask you for any extra cash to get this done. We just need 2-3 more weeks to get to flip financing to a renovation loan.
And that's permissible.
If they agree to that extension to not have to do any of the repairs themselves, then yeah.
Wow.
Right, or relist it and face going back through, the whole 30+ day process. Usually it's a little bit quicker to just convert it, get the contractor's bid for whatever repairs are needed and convert it to a renovation loan. And usually at that point, I mean, if the loan's been processed to a certain point and potentially conditionally approved, usually we can close it out pretty quickly. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we are at the mercy of the contractor to get us their documentation pretty quickly, which again is typically what, if something's going to add time onto these, it's usually that contractor selection process. And then once they've selected a contractor and give us their contact information, we reach out to them directly for everything we need, but it can take a little time.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stand up. Had a question. Go ahead.
Hi, yes, thank you, Christopher and Nicholas. This is a really good discussion. And I'm not a seasoned realtor or investor. I'm very new to this. I actually just got my offer selected yesterday. And so this is my first,
ratified
my
contract.
second
Yay.
DC at that, right?
Congratulations.
It's a single family home, and I went through, this is really my kind of first investment in property, but I'll be moving into it as my primary residence and renting out my current home. And I'm working with a lender right now. My issue that I'm having is, and where I don't know what to do next. I went through today and got an inspection done, and I'm looking to rehab the house. We're going to closing in 30 days. And the inspector, had good bones and everything, but, needs a lot of work done. So new roof, all new appliances, etc. So I'm looking for at conventional financing and solutions, not conventional, but financing solutions to do the rehab. And so I'm just not sure where to go, whether I should bundle this in one of your products. I'm just trying to figure out financing steps because it is a large down payment with this one lender. They're giving me a 30-year conventional financing. And I'm very new to this. So I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way to finance this rehab. If I could do it in one loan, that would be great. But any advice?
Yeah, it really depends. When's your closing date?
I'm sorry, March 12th.
Okay, so that's with February being a short month, that's not too far away. It depends. Like when you say it's a large down payment, what kind of percentage are we talking about?
Well, for me, it's a large down payment,
Yeah.
but 5%.
Okay, yeah. So, and I mean, as a first-time home buyer, if you're doing a conventional loan, you should be able to do 3%. I think. I mean, right, Matt? I think Fannie and Freddie allow 3%.
Yeah, if it's under 647, 200, you can do 3% down.
Regardless of income threshold, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I should say that when I put the bid on the property, it was as is, so it couldn't go FHA. So I went conventional.
I mean, you can, as is, you can do FHA. And I mean, you could do an FHA 203K. Yeah, I guess it wouldn't pass standard FHA appraisal inspection, maybe in its current state, not knowing the state of the property. But
yeah, I would. If you can get an extension on your closing, then we can talk about flipping to a renovation loan. Otherwise, you may just want to try to put less money down and do the work. If the home's livable, you may want to just do the work after you close on your own.
Yeah, or we could look at a renovation refinance immediately after closing. If extending the closing date is not an option. Yeah, I mean, realistically, it'd be really tough to get either a HUD consultant or a contractor's bid quickly enough to get an appraisal ordered and get that back in time to make 312 at this point. But you should definitely look at your options just so you don't, rush to closing and then wish that you had done something else, whether that's talk to your agent and see maybe if you can get a little extra time on the contract, depending on the seller situation. But it's definitely worth looking at your options. And Matt and I could definitely show you like a preliminary estimate of what you'd be looking at as far as using a purchase with a renovation loan or potentially refinancing after the fact.
Thank you.
I just dropped my email in the chat box if you want to reach out to chat.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, good luck. I mean, even
Follow-up.
if you don't use us, good luck with everything. Let us know how it goes.
I just have one follow-up. How long of an extension would you suggest?
It really depends. It depends how quickly you could get that consultant out there and potentially get a scope of work, because when we order the appraisal and how quickly you could get a contractor selected is going to dictate how much time we may need. So usually in a case like this, if you're going to switch to renovation, we should try to get the consultant out there, try to, see if we can get the appraisal ordered, and then we'll have a much firmer expectation of how much time we may need, rather than say right now, can we get a 2-week extension and risk, that should be enough time. But rather than have to keep going back to the seller to ask for an additional extension, usually I would say, let's try to get some of the pieces in place, determine exactly how much time we may need, and ask them for one extension rather than risk going back to them multiple times.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome stuff. We'll spend about 4 more minutes on this subject. Then we're going to transition it to Joe, and Carlos is chomping at the bit to talk about the market data.
Well, first of all, does anybody have any more questions for these guys or want to set up a follow-up meeting with them? I think one thing you could do is, if you have a question that you think we could cover quickly or that might benefit the whole group, we could try to address it now. Or another thing to do is to set up a meeting with Matt and Chris. And I imagine that there are homeowners, investors, and realtors in this meeting who might want to do that for various reasons. Follow up with them.
I just want to, if I can, Carlos, I did a RIA group on Saturday morning. There was about 60 people on there, and everyone was asking for someone. It was actually a Baltimore RIA thing, Christopher, and everyone's asking for the stuff that you do. So I think everyone on this call, I don't think you guys understand how rare it is to find a banker that if you pay all hard money, that he can refinance you out of it within, of course, the appraisal has to come in, but he can do up to 10 houses under Fannie and Freddie. Then after that, you'll roll it into a commercial loan, which will then not affect your personal credit anymore. And then you can start the process all over again. So I hope you guys all understand that. I mean, I took 200,000 and I turned it into 3 million using this strategy. And I'm just glad that we have Christopher. I mean, I'm definitely going to be calling him. I just bought those 4 houses, so I might take a little bit of a break, but I mean, it's an amazing program. And then for everyone here that's doing HUD stuff, or if you have clients that can't find houses, if you guys use the HUD website, he's basically telling you how you can get your clients to qualify using HUD, and HUD will wait for you. If you submit an offer on HUD, you submit it the same day. They respond to you the very next day. If they approve it, I think they'll give you up to 2 months to close on the loan. And all it is $1,000 EMD.
Yeah.
So this guy gave you guys gold. I hope you guys realize that. If I didn't own so much real estate, I'd keep my mouth shut so you guys wouldn't learn about this.
HUD on their contracts.
Good secrets, Chad.
Chad's taking a break, so he won't be buying any more properties till March. So why don't we do everything we can in February while he breathes?
There you go. HUD
Chad,
will
you're
automatically give 60 days on their contracts for 2 or 3 Ks. Conventional renovation, they'll do 45 days, but HUD's pretty forgiving with 15-day extensions in the event we need it.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like, Nick, let's figure out whether that's another session in itself, this whole HUD piece, because I'm definitely ignorant to that. And I feel like there's a lot there to uncover. What I wanted to advertise is that because it's early in the year, we have an opportunity to look at market data. And we always do, right? Nick, I don't want to look at it now necessarily because that's going to distract people. This is a little advertisement in the middle of this meeting about the fact that we're going to talk about market data at the end of this meeting. What we're about to do right now is talk to Joe. And if you want some buy and hold mojo, talk to Joe. Just, maybe try to get some of that mojo off of him. He's enthusiastic. He's smart. It's changed his life. He just, he's a true believer. And so often talking to a true believer is like contagious in a very positive way. But back to the advertisement for the market data, just really quickly. We had a heck of a year last year. We have very bizarre conditions in our economy and our society. And in November and December, we were looking forward to January when we could have the market reports that summarize all 12 months of 2021 so that we could look at them and understand what had just gone down. Well, that's happened and we've got the data. Plus, now we're halfway into February and some of us who are very active in the market, whether we're investors or professionals, can report to you like, whoa, I also now have a new impression of the market. It's very different from November and December. Something about turning into the new year might have to do with seeing the light at the end of the tunnel regarding Omicron, and maybe a million other factors. Very, very importantly, including interest rate activity that's already occurred and that's forthcoming and anticipated. So we have a lot to talk about with regard to market data, and we are going to do some of that at the end of this meeting, and we may have to set up additional meetings to do a little bit more of that. But some of us who geek out on the data have sort of like a lot we want to share. And then also, in my particular case, like some things I want to know about what your impressions are of where we are and where we're going, because this is a group that spends a lot of time thinking about this. I think we can get a lot off of each other from that. So that's a little ad. We're trying to go to about 7. It's 6:30 now. But if we were meeting in person, what would happen is people who thought they were here till 7, would head out. Some people might even leave early, like now, if they had to get somewhere. But most people would stick around till 7, and then a group would probably linger, nosh on something, drink something, maybe even agree to go to a bar down the street to continue the conversation or the vibe. So we're going to try to at least start getting into the market data, towards the end of the hour. Maybe, Nick, should we say at about 6:50 or so? But if it feels like that's cramming Joe too much, then we'll nudge it a little, and some of you might have to stick around till later. Or what we'll do is just set up another meeting to really just geek out on the data and just focus on that. So with no more words from me, let's hear from the enthusiastic and intelligent Joe.
Yes, hi everyone. Thanks, Carlos and Nick, for having me. First, I want to say that I wish I knew about this product that Matthew Christopher offered, because I've been self-funding the renovation cost. So a little, late, but I'm sure I'll reach out
in the future
when we acquire a new one.
Better late than never.
Yeah. Correct. So the YCI way. So basically, as I mentioned in the intro, we try to add value as much as we can, and we try to be out there, connecting with like-minded investors, people who've been doing it in the market, reaching out to realtors like Nick and Carlos that know and can help us find the right properties. And we have created, as we are learning and building our portfolio, we like to document things. And so we created like our social media and posted some video stuff to help people who are like kind of hesitant in starting in real estate investing, to show them how we did it, basically. And we along the way we paid mentors. It costs money to learn. And I think about it as like, people go into a 4-year college, they pay, thousands of dollars for tuition. if I pay a mentor, you know, $2,000 or $3,000, you know, $3,000 to teach us something, to me, that's very valuable. And, you know, I value that education up front. And it would save me, you know, time and money down the road for sure. And yeah, so we, you know, renovate, add value, and rent in DC. We have a property also in Frederick, Maryland, but we also self-manage, and you know, we take care of our tenants. You know, there are our customers, clients. You know, we have, you know, self-managing, as I mentioned, and we do things to kind of like have you know, tenant retention. You know, sending out gifts, you know, checking in every now and then, things like that, to minimize turnover. So the next thing is that we can show the property that we did. So we acquired this property to help with Nick. You know, this was a short sale property. It's been sitting on the market. This is what I call a stale listing. No one touched it. It's been a while. It was like delisted a couple times, back on. And so we reached out, and, you know, Nick helped us put an offer in as a primary residence. So before this, we already had acquired the property, 3 units. So we're living in one of the units and waiting for our next one. So this was our next house. And, you know, so it was a short sale, a few other offers, and basically we won because Nick makes it happen. So, you know, for this, we did a full gut job, and, you know, it was a 2-bedroom, actually, 2 legal bedroom house. So we turned it now into a 6-bedroom house, and it will be rented, you know, to a voucher holder family for, you know, $6,281. And you know, like the photos show, basically we did everything. You know, new appliances, new HVAC, 2 HVAC systems. We created a front entrance for the basement. You know, for in the future, if we want to decide to sell it, you know, these are some good selling features.
I mean, I would like to live there. Why give such a great product to a voucher tenant? I mean, voucher has all this. Why target them? And where did you, you know? It sounds like a risky strategy.
Well, for us, you know, as I said, you know, paying mentors to learn about these things, and we learned about the voucher holder, you know, program through Dr. Joe, and this, you know, was a test basically. And, you know, this location is basically in a tier 1 neighborhood, and they pay voucher, DC voucher, you know, they pay the highest in these areas. And that's why we try to maximize, you know, the square footage, and so increase the rent because it's based on the number of bedrooms. So and also it's by the metro, so it's a great location, and it would attract voucher holder, and they will stay longer and minimize turnover, which is usually the biggest cost when doing the buy and hold strategy.
Yeah, one of the areas in long-term buy and hold that people don't focus on enough is what you just said, minimizing turnover.
Yeah.
You know, it's so easy to get very focused on the brighter, shinier objects, but always embedded in the profit and loss scenario are these little places where you can really minimize friction and reduce costs, right? And that's a big one, isn't it? It's like, it's one of those things that when I was a new investor, I've been investing now since the mid-90s, buy and hold. But when I was a new investor, I would hear people say that and go, makes sense, but whatever, in one ear, out the other. But now, the longer I've been doing it, the more I sort of meditate on just the value of it. It's not only about saving money and time, but also like, you know, because the truth is, right, I think that buy and hold investing just blows the wheels off, the socks off. It just creams investing in equities. Personally, I believe that. But it's also true, I must admit, it's not quite as passive. It's not quite as
Correct. Correct.
But,
Yeah.
but it can be relatively passive. And here we are talking about one of the ways. If turnover is minimized, not only is it about time and money, but it's a little bit about worry. Because let's be honest, we're not robots. When it's vacant, you know, our blood is, you know, running a little higher. We're fretting a little bit more. We try to stay cool, but it's like this thing that we got to deal with, filling that vacancy. Yeah. Hate to go on.
I mean,
it's a not sexy topic, but I think it's really sexy.
Yeah. I mean, turnover, especially with this strategy, is, you know, to get a tenant in, it usually takes 2 months. You know, and with a house like this, you know, 1.25 million, it's just, you know, the mortgage, you know, it's kind of high. So the longer you wait, you know, to put a tenant in, that's like, plus you have to do all the painting and all that stuff. And like you said, I don't want to create another job. So this is a way for me to be minimizing turnover will help me, and I do this as passively as possible without getting into like the turnover every year or 2 years.
But you know what's worse than that, Carlos and Joe? You know what's worse than a vacant house? A non-paying tenant that you can't evict.
Yeah.
And DC, and from what I hear from DC, I was on another call. They said that there's one judge, if it was too cold, he goes, I'm not evicting them when it's this cold outside. And if it's too hot, he says, what you want me to evict her and her kids and put her out in the hot summer? So you have to try to get them on the shoulders of the year. And then good luck finding a date on that end. So that will make you even cry, even worse if you have a $4,000 mortgage and your tenants who said that they were going to pay you whatever the mortgage is, they haven't paid. That's when you need to send Nicholas down there and have them physically removed.
Well, Joe, I was going to ask you this as a follow-up. That's funny, Jad. You're too much. In terms of screening your clients through Section 8, I've had some nightmare scenarios, not with Section 8 voucher holders, but with market rate folks who come in, say they can pay the rent, will stay for 2 months, and then stop paying. That's the downside with market rate, because now you've got 10 months to try to get them out of there. And if they're, you know, knowledgeable about DC's TOPA laws, then they know how to play the system. It's a nightmare in DC. But finding a voucher holder who is a great person, of which there are many, is a good thing, because if you have to put them out, you will still get paid while you're going through the process. So my question to you is, how do you screen these folks out so that you end up with really good tenants who want to stay there? Because that's a big question.
Great question, Sadie. Right. Wait to hear this. Go ahead.
Yes. So basically, for me, when I'm, you know, it's all about supply and demand, right? Yeah. So if you have a lot of demand for your product, you have a wide selection of people that you can choose from in order to get the best, right? And there's a shortage in how, you know, for this product in DC, you know, it's not easy to find a 5 or 6 bedroom house in DC as a voucher holder, right? So once I knew that, this is like, okay, a light bulb, went off in my head. It's basically, I get, I do an open house, or actually sometimes, with COVID, I just schedule, separate 15 minutes, showing back to back. And I screen from the moment I reached out to them, how responsive they are, right? When they show up, how the kids are behaving, are they gonna break things, I call the current landlord and past landlord. I've done this, I've talked to past landlord before, and they say they never paid their portion. So, I've had that these calls with past landlord. Current landlords, they'll be happy to get rid of them. So they tell you, good things. So, and other things that I've learned as well is once I kind of narrowed it down to 3 applicants, I kind of go through the current home and see how they live, and and I see, okay, this is how they live, this is how the whole house look like now, and this is how my house is gonna look like in whatever 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
Yeah.
So you can tell, how they're gonna take care of the house, and that's what I care about. I'm sorry.
Yes. Joe, you got that one from Dr. Joe Asamoah, right?
Yes, yeah. This is what paying, the mentors. I mean, it helps
star
with
pupils
this.
now like
Yes.
Yeah.
So this Joe
is now the
down
teacher
now.
kind of thing.
Yeah, this Joe is a disciple of Dr. Joe Asamoah, who is a very experienced teacher now and long-term investor in this segment. And when I first heard Joe and the other Joe casually just say, "Yeah, just do this," it's like obvious, right? I'm like, oh my God, it's so obvious, but it's like so radical because I never heard it before. Because of fair housing, you must put everyone through the same process. And you don't need to do this only with voucher housing. Any one of us can do this with any one of our rentals, and probably every one of us should. But I don't know whether we're going to be disciplined enough to do it. There is some work involved. But you would write on your application that the penultimate, the second to last step in the process is an interview at your current residence. So the applicant knows it in advance. Every applicant knows it. And what it will do, Dr. Joe says, is it will scare off a number of the applicants because they don't want that level of scrutiny. They don't want you visiting their busted up house the way they treat it. So that they can treat yours that same way. And what's going to happen is you'll gain great insights into how they live and how they're going to potentially live in your place. So it's a brilliant, non-discriminatory way to, try to find someone who's going to care for your home the way you hope that they will.
Yeah, the credit score and and income, they're not big factors when it comes to this, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that like everyone else uses credit score, and Joe's like, okay, I'm doing voucher tenant, so okay, don't worry about your credit score.
Yeah.
Let me go.
Yeah,
but you know what the funniest part is for everyone on this call is that Joe probably sets up an appointment to go see their house. So do you think these people are stupid? Don't you think they hire a professional cleaning crew for like $120? They're like, listen, everyone, let's clean up this shit. This landlord is going to give us this $1.25 million house. Let's, make this house spotless.
You can smell the bleach. It's fresh bleach then.
But you got to respect that. That's someone who has some wherewithal to actually make a presentation of a sort. We're not always perfect 24/7.
Yeah.
But they can tidy up and make it look right. And a busted door is a busted door.
Yeah.
No house cleaner's going to clean that.
So the $1 million question to Carlos and Nicholas and Joe is: have you ever been to a house where the house was still a mess? Like that she knew you were coming and he or she didn't give a shit, and the house was still a hot mess when you got there.
I mean, you can see the clutter, and even if the house is clean, I can see how. I'm not going to, that's the other thing. Like, I'm not going there just to see how clean it is. I'm going there to screen the family. So, right, not just the physical house. So I'm doing that and screening the family as well, including the kids. And so it's not like one single focus going there to see if the house is clean. So I'm looking at how, kids
just one thing, Carlos and Nicholas and everyone else on this call, can you imagine Joe going to the house as the interview, and as he's leaving, they're like, so do we get the house? And he says, listen, guys, I'm sorry. It's just your level of cleanliness just isn't up to par. And I really want to apologize. And I wish you the best with your home rental search. Have you ever said that to anyone before you left the house, Joe? Have you ever had the balls to do that?
But this is not the only criteria when I go there. You're too focused on the cleanliness.
Yeah.
It's true. You can't give the good news to everybody, but I also
is always the number one thing that just like skews me. There was a house that I was showing a client, the HUD homes, and it was occupied by the owner. They had 2 babies. They were so cute, but they must have pooped themselves and no changing. So it smelled like poop. And man, I think I still have a reaction to that. But yeah. I think that screening process is a good one, and not to differentiate or discriminate against people with credit. It's showing that they're good people, they have families, and often it's single parents, it's single mothers with 5 kids. They need a bigger house or a healthier house, and location. I think that's a tier. I have different tiers. So they want a house not in the burbs or in D1. They want one in Capitol Hill where the schools are good and their kids are safe, and they're not 2 kids, but they're many kids.
Joe, I know somebody
Yeah.
who wouldn't pass your test. I think my youngest child. If you saw
Okay.
the room, and I've literally had that thought. I've gone up into her room sometimes and gone, you know, you're never going to rent anything in your life. No one's ever going to rent anything to you.
Oh, so much.
And I have some young
Yeah.
tenants rather, and sometimes it is just insane how they live. If I had done that, I might never have let them be my tenant. You know, if I had done what you do on the front end.
Correct that. Yeah.
It's
That's the work. I mean, I like to do the work up front, like you said, and you know, even if I have to put that extra effort to go and visit, and you know, it prevents me from dealing with headaches down the road. Sandy, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
And thank you for that. That was very illuminating.
And
You're
for
welcome.
Burke Street, there were some challenges, and I know some victories, you know, like any other ones. What were some of the challenges? And this is just a small sample of a renovation not gone wrong, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, overall, I mean, as it wasn't that bad, so it can always be worse. So you know, we'll always budget like 15% contingency of the renovation budget, and some things that came up. The slab wasn't actually concrete, so it was. I still don't even know what kind of
Dirt.
material it was.
Dirt.
Like
Was it
some
dirt?
red clay. Yeah, I don't know. If you drop something on it, it breaks right away. So we had to kind of, you know, replace that, of course. And the other thing was just with the way DCRA, the agency that regulates construction in DC, works, there's some certain restriction building lines that we have to stay within. So because we didn't know this up front, we kind of had delayed, you know, some of the exterior renovation a little bit. So that added another month, a month and a half. You know, so that's an additional mortgage payment that I had to make. And systems, and we try to track everything. So you know, we put everything in Excel sheet, and you know, we track every expense that we make, every payment we make to the contractor, and we try to stay on budget. I mean, we buy our appliances when there's major holidays like Christmas and New Year's, and we get these packages and save on these things. And we buy like hardwood flooring from place in Glen Burnie, like it's a big depot. You know, I try to save on these little things. You know, they add up. And for a refinance strategy, I mean, we are able to get 85% LTV. And so this is where the wealth building, you know, snowballs, I would say. So in DC, you get like both equity appreciation, I mean, and rental cash flow. So we, I don't know if the next slide is like the numbers, but basically for our refi, you know, we bought it, you know, for 610, put in like maybe like 240 renovation for full renovation, and ARV came at 1.25 million. So we were able to cash out like $480,000. And that actually helped us to buy our next 2 properties in DC. And
Hey, slow that down. Slow that down.
Yes.
Do you guys hear that? I mean, people were like, $615 for that piece of that you overpaid, you know, $610. But $850, and what was the ARV? The
1.2, 1.25. Yeah.
And then what did you do after that? It appraised, and then you.
So I did the cash out. So at 85%, we were able to cash out around 480,000. So it's nice to get a check at closing versus like bam, you know, at closing. So yeah, I mean, we use that money to purchase our next properties. And the good thing is actually we went even further. We got a HELOC. So up to 100% of the equity in the house. So we got a HELOC on that. So now we have 480 plus 180 to, you know, to kind of like play with and renovate and, you know, buy and renovate more houses. So this is just for one house. So this is the power of leverage and using this strategy, adding value by finding the right property in the right location.
3 questions for you, Joe.
Yes.
Wow.
How much profit do you make monthly on Burke?
So it's not rented yet, but the
you expect?
yeah.
Yes,
for the cash flow would be like net would be around $1,000 a month.
Okay, so 1,000.
And net after putting away. Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, what is your loan amount?
It was 85 LTV, so whatever that is.
Ballpark, just give me a quick number.
850,000. So it's about $1 million.
$1 million?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And what was your rate roughly?
Like 3.25.
Got it. Okay. And then what's the total value of the property?
1.25.
Okay.
That was yesterday. Today it's probably worth 1.4.
Yeah.
Seriously,
1.4 right
maybe
now?
even 1.5.
Yeah, that
serious.
was yeah.
I could
Let's
sell
say
that house for close to 1.5 right now.
Let's say 1.4 right now, although it sounds like there's $150, it just happened, which is great. 150 that just happened. So those are the 3 buckets I'm looking at in my buy and hold scenario or mindset. And I on these scrappy notes, form of printout of property tour. There I've got. I'm not sure if you can quite see that. It's just chicken scratch. Just says 1,000 a month. It says $1 million at 3.25, and it says the value is 1.4. So at $1 million at 3.25, probably that's something like $4,200 a month is the mortgage, and probably like 35 or 40%, let's say 37% is the principal. So $1 million a month, and what I just say, 4,200 times
40%.
Let's call it 4.4. So that's 1,680 a month. 1,680 a month in payments to principal. And I love to focus on the thing that isn't sexy, but I think it's sexy when it's so dependable, because all they're doing is servicing the loan to have their net worth grow by 1,700 a month. Let's call it 1,680. And if it's a $1.4 million property, we could sort of shift a little bit into talking about values. What do we think? Do we think DC is going to appreciate by 8% again, like it did last year? And by the way, DC median pricing appreciated by 8%, but that's inclusive of condos. Condos definitely did not. As a listing agent, it was a struggle to sell condos. So just in the hierarchy, which is different in COVID than it was before, it was really easy to sell suburban houses. It was pretty easy to sell urban houses, and it was tough as to sell condos in the city in particular because of COVID. COVID sort of flips things around and makes everyone go out rather than in. The multi-decade trend is everyone's going in, right, to the center. I will take less space for a better lifestyle and a quicker commute. So are we going to say DC will appreciate by 8% again? Are we going to have a better or worse year than last year? Go neutral.
I think it's going to appreciate
more or less than last year.
I think it's going to appreciate more because COVID is receding. People are feeling restless. They want to get out there. They want to get active. They want their old lives back, and for folks who now have to go back to their office, some of them are regretting having moved way out to have more space when now the commute is a factor again.
Wait, Sandy, you and I have to talk about that.
All
Are you predicting that, or are you saying you're already observing it?
I'm observing it.
Really? We have to talk, because I look for little like the four, what's at the fore of what we're gonna see, and I haven't seen that yet, but I'm very curious about that. As an investor, mostly who's urban, I want to hear that the city's gonna go up more. But did you guys know that Washington always appreciates?
Yeah.
Except when it doesn't. And guess what? Washington rarely doesn't. So I've been here since '94. I've been staring at the market. I used to be a non-realtor. The technology wasn't what it is. And so I was like looking at the Washington Post. That was my data source, okay? I had nothing special. but I was using that. Whatever I've had at my disposal, I've used it, stared at it. The market makes one little move, I know it. I see it because I know what the picture looks like because I've been staring at it. And so what I'm telling you is that apart from maybe 3 years, I'm trying to remember which ones they were. And, you know, in different neighborhoods, it may not have been exactly the same time, but the metro area as a whole, I want to say since 94, maybe it was 8, 9, 10. No, it was more like 7, 8, 9 that the metro area as a whole wasn't appreciating. Other than that, it has been. It's roughly 30 years.
Yeah.
And so you take away those 3, about 90% of the time it appreciates. That's in my lifetime as an investor. So it's always appreciating, except when it's not, which is very rare. And by the way, those years when it wasn't, there was a financial crisis, which they call like, it's like a once every who knows how many. It's not like a regular type of cycle, you know, end to a cycle. Right. That was a doozy, right, of an end to a cycle. So the thing I'm trying to get at is and Cindy and Nick, members of our team, and Matt, I think has heard this too. In every one of those years when it was appreciating, which is almost always, the city appreciated more than the metro area as a whole, but not the last 2 years. So one thing that COVID did, and this is what Sandy and I are geeking out about, is, you know, how consumers are behaving in the city or go out, more elbow room. The last 2 years, the burbs appreciated more than the city. That's my punchline. Okay, so back to our scenario. Should we say, just be careful and say 5% in case we're way off and it doesn't appreciate as much as last year? So what's 1.4 million times 5%? That's 50,000 plus 20,000, that's 70K.
Wow.
That's 70K. So he's got, in a year, he's got 12K plus, what's 1680? 1680 times 12. That's your payments to principal. That was 20,160. I'm just going to call it 20K. And then he's got 70K. So those are the 3 buckets for me. And this is what buy and hold does. We've got 12K off of cash flow. We've got 20K off payments to principal and 70K off of appreciation. And so this is why I tend not to focus so much personally on cash flow, because I'm looking at the bigger numbers. I think when I'm an older guy who's retired and doesn't have a business that makes him cash, isn't employed anymore really, is retired, maybe I'll be a little feistier with my portfolio about cash flow. But you can become wealthy. You can become wealthy and even make a little money. Joe is making 12. Joe and his team are making 12K, 20K, and 70K this year if we appreciate by 5%. The 70K is, of course, not really 100% well known. I mean, meaning we can't know for sure that'll happen. By the way, if it's 10%, that's 140K. We were very cautious. The market appreciated by 8% last year in the city. Some people think it'll do more. That number includes condos, which dragged us down. So maybe houses appreciated by more than 10%. I have to actually look for that particular data. But you feel me? This is what the buy and hold investor is really doing. Now, how much cash did you tie up to even get into this project? Ultimately, because after you'd got
correct, yeah. So that's what I was gonna add actually. So all this money that you're talking about, all the cash flow, it cost us basically nothing. Actually, we got our money back and plus some. So we have no money in the deal. So cash on cash is basically infinite. So this is the beauty of this deal. So it cost us nothing and we get in all this. So we put the renovation plus the down payment. We took all that out and plus some more.
So how much was the renovation, Joe?
240,000.
Yeah, and you lived in the house, so that's not like. Although that's a badass.
You need to live anywhere, though, right? You need to live somewhere.
Yeah, but my point is that like other investors, I mean, we're gonna like I live in Oakton. I'm gonna go move out of my house in Oakton and go live in Southeast DC and spend 240,000. It's not practical. You did something. I mean, but maybe it is a lot of people on the call.
Yeah. No, this is definitely a good way to start out, and that's how I did for the triplex. I got a 3-unit before, and I lived in one, and I'm doing it again, and I'm doing it again. So
1 second, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
And I know some people have to log off. It's 3 after 7. We're going to do a little after hours for the next 15 or so minutes, going over the market and finishing up Joe's section. So also be on recording, so and we'll send out notes.
that little
And then Sandy, whatever you're cooking, I hope it's good.
that little exchange just
I got kids, you know.
soup's on. That little exchange between Jad and Joe was interesting. So let me just break a couple things down for you. Jad is further along as an investor, and very importantly, Jad is further along in life, like he's older. Okay. Now you don't have to be young to be built for speed, but there may be certain stages in your life. I'm at such a stage, although I may be coming out of it. My kids are moving the house, where you're not built for speed. When I was younger with no kids and willing to move about, then I had to attack the market through my primary residence, which is what Joe has done. And Jad is saying those days are behind me. I can't do that. Jad is at a different level of scale and sophistication. We're all at different levels, but think to yourself, am I built for speed? I.e., can I move about? Because if you can invest through your primary residence, you must do so. You must do so.
Right. I mean, because like, for instance, like if I have 3 kids and they're going to Waples Mill Elementary School in Oakton, it's a 9 out of 10. Am I going to go move them to Trinidad in the middle of the ghetto and you have them, pay for private school just so they don't get, I mean, you guys have seen the crime report there. I mean, obviously Joe was in a different situation, but I don't think it's practical. Also, Joe got a little bit lucky. He bought it for $615. He put $240. So he's in at it at $865. Obviously, I was on the other call where his partner was able to have a good relationship with the appraiser. It came in 1.25. But if the appraisal had came in at 1 million, he'd be at break even right now. And I've had appraisals come in 70,000 low. And, it just depends on what appraisal you get. I mean, you had good luck with the appraisal. But I think the worst thing that can happen to Joe is that you get drunk off of your first really good deal. And I mean, I lost $170,000 on an apartment building, where saying like I did really good on my first deal, and I was like, I'm the shit. And it's the worst thing that can happen because the next deal you lose. So, but Joe's a smart guy, and I'm sure I was just a dummy when I lost my money. But sometimes you have to be careful because the first deal you got lucky with the appraisal, you got lucky with the appreciation right now in DC.
Skill, man. Some people call it luck. Some people call it skill.
Yeah, luck. And I mean, you have to work for it to get lucky. You don't get lucky just out of nowhere. So we got the relationship with the appraisal. I mean, because we learned that, right? We paid for it to know what to do and what to do.
My brother, you got. Listen, Joe, I love you. You're gonna next year when you come on this call, you're gonna be like, Jad, you were right. I wasn't humble, and real estate kicked my ass. You'll see because you got lucky with the appraisal. Trust me, like God blessed you with that appraisal. If you got another appraiser that says this is a piece of shit row house in the middle of Southeast and you're not going to appraise for more than $1 million, what would you have done?
I would prevent that by doing what I did.
Well, we did the ARV comps beforehand, and actually,
we did the comps.
And I remember this because Joe was like, I would be happy with 1.5 or anything above $1 million. He was nervous about that million.
Hey, Jad is going to test you. Don't expect him to stop testing you. He's going to encourage you.
Yeah, it's good.
Hear you.
Yeah, that's good.
No, it's just because like everyone on this call, like real estate will humble you. Like I've been where Joe is. Like, you've made the big money, you get the paychecks, and then it's always just like one deal away. You're always leaning, and then you just get caught. And so just be careful, Joe. You've been blessed with this good deal, but there's so many deals that are minefields out there. Don't think because you had a good appraisal, you'll always have a good appraisal. Don't think because DC is appreciating that it's always going to appreciate. I know right now you're like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. But until you've lost $170,000 and your significant other is like crying, it's like
there's some wisdom to your madness, Chad. I agree, and it's to be scrupulous. And I wouldn't say Joe is not scrupulous because he is.
Yeah, I mean, Nick knows, we have a very strict criteria and the price point, and we're constantly monitoring the market and watching out for that. So we turn down many houses. It's not like the next house I see, I'm gonna put an offer. So no, to your word, Jad, not correct. I mean, it's all about staying up to date on what's happening, market updates, and just making sure that look at what the valuation is going to be, and based on that, buy the house and budget.
And
for
so, and Joe,
renovation.
and that's why you should stick around for Carlos's market update. I mean, that's why we all
Yes,
stick around.
that's
for the
why
end.
I'm here. Mhm.
Yeah.
A good
So just pay
transition. Well,
attention.
thank you, Joe. I know we
Thank
could
you.
build a part 2 on your thing, so keep tuned, and thank you. Looking forward to see what happens in 2022.
Jad, that was such a smooth segue. I didn't even notice it was happening. So really quickly, I just want to be provocative for a minute, because I find it like thought-provoking. When I first read it, I was just like, really? Are you kidding me? And by the way, I think I read it in like November, the 16% number. So that's on your screen. Goldman Sachs had the gall to tell us late last year that in 2022, median U.S. pricing was going to go up by 16%. By the way, Zillow more recently also said that they're seizing, they're focusing in on a pretty audacious number. I am actually a believer in the market's strength currently, and I do see the possibility that the market might be flat in DC, in the metro area, or even down a little bit at some point in the next 10 or 20 years, certain years. But I predict, that there's going to be a pattern that's generally upward moving, with the occasional exception. But nowhere, in my brain was there room for the number 16%. And when I saw it, I just about, lost it. I was just like, what? What do you guys think about that number? Have you, and does anyone here have familiarity with that report? Because I could also describe some elements about it, or any questions about it. Anyone want to talk about that report or ask about it? Or vote?
I mean, Carlos, I watched a podcast the other day. They said that every year, 5 million people are turning 30, which means those 5 million people that are turning 30 every single year are looking to get out of condos or apartments so their kids can run around and play and have a front yard. So do you think 5 million houses are being built every year to sustain or to keep up with that demand?
All right, this conversation's over. He did it. That's the issue. But of course, he knows it so well. That's why the man talks so fast and acts so fast, because he's out there trying to make it happen while he can, because he knows this thing is real. And I feel the same way. I just can't keep up with Jack, but I feel the same way. Right? And I know that sometimes Cindy on our calls, I know my wife feels it. Nick feels it. Nick also feels it himself. I know my wife's like, dude, not again. When I want to do another house. Yeah. Jad is talking about supply and demand. He's talking about what we can predict in demographically with regard to the rate of household formation, right? And he's looking at housing starts, and he's looking also at infill and redevelopment stuff, like in the core, and the numbers just tell the story. There's not enough housing. And do you want to provide a link to the article, or should we send it afterwards to people, or let us know if you want it and you email us? But it's a little report. It might have been about 6 pages long, and it has a few bullet points explaining that number. By the way, I don't believe the number. Let me just be clear. By putting it up there, this is not to say Grid endorses the number. I personally am skeptical. Furthermore, DC is a high-cost area, so I don't think we've got the upside that, say, some Rust Belt states have. Okay.
But the irony, Carlos, is that Goldman Sachs and Blackstone, I think it's Blackstone, they're the ones creating a lot of the shortage. I went out to dinner with a guy that owns a big startup, like a flipping business, like flipping lender. I don't want to say actually it's Fund That Flip, right? They're a big nationwide thing. He told me that one contractor bought up an entire piece of land and is building the entire subdivision, and he's already pre-sold it to the hedge funds. The entire neighborhood has been pre-sold for rental income. So how do you they want to create that's a big conspiracy theorist, but they want to create a nation of renters.
Around the country, it's happening everywhere. It's
And this is
really
in North
bad.
Carolina. This is right outside. Yeah, this is right outside, like in the triangle area, he told me.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and then when I heard that, like, that's why I've been trying to buy up as many single family and townhouses as I can right now, just before the prices get too out of whack, because I try to buy it on the 1%
Just
rule.
swooping in. Yeah, they're buying them up.
See, I've told this story before, but I'm a New York City kid, right? So I grew up in a very, very high cost area. And I saw, you know, at dinner parties and barbecues, the grown-ups saying, like, you know, to each other, one person, how did you ever manage to buy this, you know? And they'd be like, well, I did it a long time ago. There's no way I could do it now. And so that whole concept of seeing things rise in ways that will blow your minds, you know, I grew up seeing that, okay? And so I believe it because I've seen it. Now, I'm not saying that DC is New York City. It's not. You know, it's nearly as dense. It's not comparable. But the dynamic of just the lack of supply is powerful. And in that Goldman Sachs report, you'll see, like, they say it 5 different ways. It's almost like the report is a person saying to another person, I know that you know there's not enough inventory. I just don't think you understand how bad the problem is and how unlikely it is to get resolved anytime soon, and that it'll only get resolved if laws change and policies change and mindsets are shifted. But right now, none of those things is happening. So what I predict is that the problem's going to get worse, and you need to understand the implications of that. It's almost as if that report in, like, you know, Wall Street analyst speak is saying that. So I highly recommend that you read not just the top line, but the bullets supporting. The other thing that it says, and, you know, this is a variable, is that because wages are rising, you know, people may be able to afford a bit more. Now, this report was written in November when the inflation concept, you know, wasn't as emphasized as it is now. So what's the real buying power of a person with greater wages right now? That is a question. It's true. But the other part of it is that, you know, sometimes people think they can't afford something just because it's so much more expensive than it used to be. But so in that way, it feels unaffordable. But technically speaking, they have enough money to do it. And that's another part of what the Goldman Sachs report is expressing. So it's really surprising.
But Carlos, did you have anything on the market for people that are working from home now? I saw something on CNBC about the new normal, about people being able to work from home and how that's affecting the real estate. But like I flip a lot of houses in the country, and we have a lot of people now that are just like, I don't even have to go into the office. I only have to go in twice, and I set my own hours when I have to go in. So, you know, so I could sell a house now that before COVID, I was lucky I got 500. I can list it now for 650. I have a house now in Gainesville. I bought it for 365. I thought maybe I can list it for 525. I'm going to list it for 675.
So wait a minute. Let's cut to the chase. You clearly have a view. You have an opinion. You're betting that that we ought to explore new geography. I mean,
I think people are already doing that. I mean,
yeah. So what's the profile of where you urge people to consider?
But see, the only problem is that everyone on this call, like, if you live in DC and you need to work out, like, the problem is until everyone is waiting for Elon Musk's new satellite stuff, because the internet out in the Fauquier County, Spotsylvania, Catlett, those are like a lot of people that work for the Pentagon, a lot of wealthy people. There's one thing that people are not taking into account, and that's internet. And there just isn't internet, and you can't work from home. You can't do this type of stuff that we're doing right now if the internet is slow. So that's the one thing holding back the country from really taking off. You know, people in Middleburg, Percyville, the Plains, places there. Because like every time I go to sell the house, they're like, okay, well, what's our internet situation? And like, don't give us that satellite bullshit because it doesn't work. You know, where did you have Verizon? Do you have Infinity? What do you have? You know, so that's the one thing holding back rural areas from really having the prices accelerate, in my opinion.
You're awakening me to that, because I thought the experience with Airbnb, I just thought that like you could get good internet pretty much anywhere. I'm obviously ignorant to that.
Especially in rural areas. Middle America is bereft of internet access, which is what the president's bill was trying to accomplish when they got past the infrastructure bill. That is not going to happen now. So that's going to affect our industry dramatically, because there are so many people who do want to get outside of these bubbles, but they can't because they don't have access. So Jarrett, you're absolutely right on that. and it's not going to happen anytime soon. It's too expensive. It's way too expensive to do it the way we've been doing it over time.
So maybe Jad just and Sandy, maybe the two of you just lit up and are guiding us. Maybe what we should all be doing is reading for areas that are getting like into much better levels of internet access and investing there.
Yeah, especially if developers are folding this into their developments at the onset. That makes a big difference. I mean, a lot of people want to move to these rural areas because they won't have commutes, as Jad said, but that's the biggest deal. How can you work without internet? How can their kids go to school without internet? It's one of the biggest things that came out of COVID was just how inaccessible the internet is to a variety of people, even folks within inner cities where their children were going to McDonald's or Wendy's or Starbucks to access the internet. So it's a very real problem throughout the country. And it's something that, you know, I don't know, National Association of Realtors, they need to get their lobbyists in tow to get this together because it's impacting our industry. We could spread out. We could have a far greater market share if these folks were able to work from home and their children were able to obtain instruction, I should say, from home, but they can't. So we've got some madness going on.
But Carlos, don't you guys think that it might be somewhat maybe of a conspiracy in the sense that if you're like right now, talk about the demand in DC, right? Mm-hmm. Don't you think there's some people saying like, listen, if you guys give internet to anywhere and people can work from everywhere, our commercial real estate prices and our prices here in DC will crash.
Oh yeah, and that's what's happening. And so you have this big push by businesses to get people back to the office.
And I'll give you for example, Carlos, think about the gas business, the gas cars, all the money that people make from the gas tax. And all the money that, and all the gas stations that are now going to go down to zero because of the real estate. Now that we're going to have electric cars, like all of it, they killed the electric
years
cars.
out. We're not going to be completely electric.
I want to get to your question. You're basically saying if we could distribute demand across much greater geography, wouldn't that bring pricing down in places like Washington? And I think the answer is yes. That would place downward pressure. But I don't think that would make prices literally drop. I guess it depends on the degree to which that shift would occur. It's all about the actual numbers. How many people exactly are we talking about who now consider the alternative? But I was going to say that the thing that's so interesting about COVID is that in 2 years it placed very strong movement, pressure to move out against a multi-decade trend that was underway, pushing people in. Mm-hmm. So these two things are pushing against each other, and one of them's brand new, or at least obviously telecommuting is not new, but something that was relatively modern that got accelerated radically against something that was marching forward for decades in this country. Very highly evolved markets in Europe, right? Like the richest people, the most expensive real estate is like in Paris, it's in the middle. In Munich, it's in the middle. It's not in the suburbs or the exurbs. Okay, it's like we are the relatively highly evolved market where it's the opposite. And then now that's been changing over decades. So I don't really know how this powerful longtime force against this powerful new, also somewhat liberating force of I can live anywhere, how it'll play out. But I do know, and as a city kid, grew up in New York City, I love the city. Density is good because it allows for cooler retail. So if you want cool stuff to spill onto the sidewalk and go buy or do, you need these towers so that these retailers have the business model to make it work. And I can tell you that I personally, and a lot of people I know, love the woods, but we want a really good cup of coffee and a sophisticated dinner. And maybe even certain intellectual stimulation that occurs, in the core more frequently. So I think that's a big question. I have no have no ultimate answer, but I don't.
I
Think
mean,
that-
I think like for everyone on this call, if you guys get a good flip, like a good deal, and it works, makes sense as a rental, I would not flip it. I would just keep it as a rental. It's so hard to find a good deal right now to go and waste it. Like when I bought the 4 houses in Stafford back in October, it just fell into my lap. Two were from wholesalers, and 2 were from realtors. And I could have sold them, and I could have made about maybe 300, 400,000 if I sold them. But I just decided to keep them. They're on the 1% rule. I'm getting 2,500 a month from voucher tenants. And the only reason I sold the 4th one was because I bought it and the wholesaler lied to me and didn't tell me that there was no water in the house, that the well was completely dry, and that the septic, he said, was perfect, and turned out to need a brand new D-box. So I ended up, but it ended up working out for me. I just sold it last week for 320,000. So I still, in this crazy market, I still made 60 grand on a house that had no water and the septic was defective. Luckily because it was a 4-2. But I would just tell everyone on here.
You just said something serious. Jad just said something serious. Okay, like it's one thing for Carlos, who's an experienced buy and hold investor, to say, do it. You know, it's great. You should do it. It's another thing for Jad, who's an experienced buy and hold investor and an experienced flipper, to say right now he's leaning very favorably towards buy and hold. So just observe
because
that.
those houses aren't going to come on. Like, for instance, townhouses across street from George Mason that my aunt owns. She bought it for 160, let's say in the mid 90s. It's now going for 600 as is. There's nothing that's been done. I mean, the carpet smells disgusting. They haven't painted in forever. 600,000 for pre-COVID. That would go for maybe 400. I mean, think about that jump. My point is that a lot of the inventory that you guys see now will not be affordable in the near future. And it's not because the real estate, but remember, rates are 2.5%, 2.5. They used to be 4.25. That people were lucky to get 2.5. I mean, 4%. Now it's 2.5. So they can afford a lot more. And rents aren't really scaling up with the prices of houses. You'll be lucky the max you're going to get is 3,000 for the most part. I mean, maybe 3,500 if you're lucky. But then you have to worry about property taxes, and then you have to worry about maintenance costs, and then you have insurance. So I just think if you get a good deal that's under 400,000, I would keep it as a rental. You pay all cash and refinance with the gentleman that was on the call today, and just get out of it within 2 weeks. Right, Carlos?
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you've added a dimension to your advice. You're emphasizing 400,000 under, so affordable, very approachable.
Yeah, affordable. You don't want to be losing money. I mean, you never know what's going to happen with your employment. I don't lose money on any of my rentals. I buy all my houses on the 1% rule. So if the house is 300,000, I rent it for 3,000. If it's 400,000, I can rent it for 4,000, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Apartment buildings that I just bought, just buying one right now, 26 units out in Warren County. Same thing. We bought on the 1% rule.
Hey, Jad, a question. So you're saying that it's getting harder to find good deals. Is also, I mean, do you see that inflation as well is, increasing the cost of renovation? So making your margin kind of like tighter? Is that contributing?
Of course. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Materials gone up by at least 30%. That's my whole point.
Oh.
Like, I'm talking about like Northern Virginia. I mean, you can still find stuff in Baltimore for 80,000, 89,000, but I'm talking about something that you can leave to your kids, something that will keep its value, you know? So that's what I'm talking about. Like the houses that I bought in 2017, I don't know how, I remember I bought a package of houses from someone. I think there were 8 houses. They were like 1 million, 1.2. Now they've gone up to 3 million. They were all in Warrenton. I mean, imagine nothing's happened. I didn't do anything different. It just went up from 1.2 to 3 million. I mean, it's just crazy. Like the house I bought, like one house was 175,000 in Bealton, Virginia. It's now worth 375,000. Nothing has changed.
Guys, I want to make a plug because I am DC proud for the city and the metro area as a whole. Okay, as you consider where to invest, and I want to call out Brian Foster's point in the chat. So he's got a security clearance that is the very highest in order to do his work, and he's aware of that market, and that he just made a point with regard to technology that in order to do some of that work, that specialty work, you do need levels of technology and probably firewalls too, for that matter. Yeah,
and that's what I was trying to tell you, Carlos. I just did a house in Catlett, Virginia. One of the guys that wanted to buy my house, what works at the Pentagon with the top secret clearance. And we went there, and it was just a nightmare trying to get like the strong signal for this guy. Catlett is just outside of Manassas, and still the internet sucks.
Right, right. But let me make one other point about that. Not only does that have the effect of maybe then pulling a potential buyer in closer, but it has the effect of the way we're wired and the types of jobs that we've got. Washington has the kind of workforce that city planners want. You know, city planners strategize on how to pull certain demographics into their orbit to build a base, an employment base, and therefore a tax base and a job market that will sustain their locality. And interestingly, we are very aligned, us real estate investors and real estate professionals, with that vision, because we want where we're investing in real estate to be very well insulated. And so, you know, Washington, D.C. is such a place. Early in the pandemic, when it became clear that remote working, which didn't necessarily mean going to a country house in West Virginia, it might have meant like just being in your condo downtown rather than at your office, they observed that certain localities were really, really, really wired well, and that would make Washington well insulated against the downside of COVID. You know, workplaces were going to be able to keep work moving forward. So that's one thing, and I think that that's in part what Brian's talking about. But the other part is that when you're structured that way, you know, the human capital that you attract you're in this virtuous cycle, and that's for a very long time been why I have invested in the DC area. And I'm not saying it's got to be in the city, but just the DMV in general. You know, like for example, Jad mentioned Baltimore, and Jad, we've had this conversation before, but you know, like, you know, Baltimore doesn't have the workforce that DC has, and so my prediction is that Baltimore will start to really, really appreciate. And by the way, it has a lot during the pandemic. Baltimore has been very good during the pandemic, very, very good. I'd like to see whether that continues post-pandemic, but I think that Baltimore will really see its renaissance either when or both. It gets its workforce to a place where it's a very, very good place to open a shop because of the caliber of human capital, or it fundamentally gets enveloped in our minds into the DC area, and DC workers start increasingly viewing it as a viable place to live. Jad, I would love to have a conversation all about Baltimore, especially because I'm just so curious about it, and you've really, you're experienced in it. So at some point that may be a topic to have. Just
Yeah, but guys, wait 1 second.
It's got so much potential. It's got
What, Baltimore? Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were betting on the maglev train, and that got shot down. But if the maglev train had come in, you could have made it from DC to Baltimore, and what were they saying, like in under 15 to 20 minutes?
Really?
Did you hear about that, Carlos? That was a big proposal, and it just got shot down, I think, last October. But a lot of people were betting on Baltimore to get it. Imagine how much impact that would have made on real estate prices.
Oh yeah, big time. Sure. Maybe you can get to work in 30 minutes or.
And I think that like another good market for anyone here that's trying to flip houses, I think Annapolis is really good. I flipped a house there. You have really good employees. You have that Navy base there. A lot of the buyers that I had were like top rated buyers. Like they didn't even blink at prices at 500. You can still find houses there. They're pretty inexpensive.
I agree with that.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
But I just don't have the patience to drive to Annapolis. So that's what I'm telling you.
Where do you live?
I live in Oakton.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah.
So
yeah, family.
I think that Hyattsville is going fast. If anyone on here wants to flip, Hyattsville is really good. I did two houses in that area. You guys have great buyers there, right? Don't you agree, Carlos?
Love
and then anything in PG, Capitol Heights. It just, my advice to everyone here, like after flipping, and again, this is my first year flipping, was last year because I used to just buy and hold. After flipping 40 houses, just focus on getting a good contractor. Don't nickel and dime your contractor. The house that I had in Annapolis should have sold for 500, but I sold it for only 440 because my contractor was garbage. And I got him off another investor who kept tagging him on Facebook saying how amazing he is. So I don't know if that guy was just like felt bad for that contractor and just kept tagging him because the guy lived near Annapolis. But just be careful of people that tag contractors online. Anyone that has a good contractor will never tag him on Facebook because why would they do that? Then they'd be too busy to do their own work. Right. So always be wary. Usually people that are tagging contractors are tagging people that they feel bad for, that they're not using anymore, and they want him to be someone else's problem. Kind of like a girl. Imagine like a girl that you want to break up with, but you don't know how to let her down. So you want to start introducing her to your friends or someone else, because that way you can be like, Johnny likes you. You're not my type, but it's the same thing. I have to learn this the hard way, and you just have to be careful with that. But just, you can make a lot of money in flipping and if you do it right, but just please focus on your contractors. And even if a person's licensed, it doesn't mean anything because they just outsource it to other people. And if those people aren't good, then you're kind of stuck. And make sure they sign a lien waiver. You don't want someone holding you hostage when you go to sell the house because they put a lien on it because you have to fire them. You hired someone else to finish up their work.
Yeah. Well, listen, Dad, at some point we're going to have you talk to us about the year you just had, because you just dropped something in there that blew my mind. I didn't realize that last year was the year you started flipping. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm a buy and hold. I have 110 plus units. I never gave away anything. Just like I said, whenever I found a good deal, I was like, I don't need, because remember, I'm an attorney, so I make my money from my law business. I didn't need the money from flipping.
Right. Well,
but then COVID happened, and so
maybe you've told me that in the past, but it's only sinking in now. That's mind blowing. We're gonna have to. We're gonna have to have you tell the story of 2021 at some point if you would do that.
Yeah, I'm married and I have 3 kids, Carlos. I have nothing going on, unfortunately.
We're gonna wrap this one up, but before we do that, some of us talked so much, and like me, like Dad, and others. Is there anything that anyone wants to ask or wrap up with or suggest we cover in the near future? You guys good? Hopefully this has been entertaining and helpful. And our next grid is March 15th. It's a Tuesday. It'll be at 5:30 p.m. And we'll start letting you know a little bit more about the content as we get closer. But we hope that you'll join us. And someday soon we'll all meet in person.